I've made plenty of dumb mistakes. The difference is I survived them. Most people don't. One mistake in particular still irritates me, not because of the money, but because it was avoidable. I once passed on an investment that would have made me hundreds of millions. Why? Because I let ego get in the way. The details don't matter. What matters is that I thought I was too smart to bother. I wanted something prettier, more sophisticated, more worthy of my intellect. The plain, obvious deal didn't interest me. And by ignoring it, I paid tuition to arrogance. People assume the biggest mistakes in investing come from ignorance. They don't. They come from overconfidence, from knowing too much or thinking you do. Overconfidence destroys more wealth than stupidity ever did. By 60, 70, 80 years old, this is a fatal blind spot. You probably had some success. You survived your career, raised a family, built a nest egg. You've proven yourself. But that's when the real danger starts. When you start believing you can't be wrong. That's when one reckless decision can undo everything you've built. I've watched it happen. People nearing retirement pour their savings into garbage investments because they think they see something others don't. 9 times out of 10, what they saw was an illusion. And illusions are expensive. Here's the real trick. Both in investing and in life, you don't need brilliance. You need humility. You need to admit daily that you're capable of screwing up. Then you design your life so that when you do screw up, it doesn't destroy you. That's what saved me. My mistake cost me millions in potential upside, but it didn't sink me because I avoided leverage. I avoided concentration. I avoided being the idiot who bets everything on one hand. Think back to the Great Depression. The people who got destroyed weren't the cautious plotters. They were the dreamers, the leveraged optimists, the ones who borrowed like crazy because they thought the future was guaranteed. When reality showed up, they were wiped out overnight. At 60 plus, you can't afford that kind of mistake. You don't have 40 years to rebuild. One careless move can erase a lifetime of careful compounding. So here's the practical takeaway. Don't get clever. The world doesn't reward cleverness past a certain age. It punishes it. Don't overreach. If you can't explain an investment in a sentence, you shouldn't own it. And don't treat missing out as a tragedy. It's not. Going broke is the tragedy. I've missed hundreds of opportunities. The world is full of them. You don't need them all. You just need to avoid the disasters. Ironically, that dumb mistake that cost me millions also saved me. It taught me that chasing brilliance is for fools. Avoiding stupidity is for survivors. And survival, after 60, is the only game that matters. Don't worry about the millions you could have made. Worry about the millions you could still lose if you forget how fallible you are. That's the real lesson. The older I get, the more I realize people don't actually think they just rearrange their prejudices. By 60, most folks are convinced their opinions are facts. They've braved them for so long that doubt feels like weakness. So they go through life smug and wrong. That's a terrible combination. I'll tell you something hard to hear. Most of what you believe is probably false, or at least incomplete. If you can't admit that, you're in trouble. I spent my career learning how to call my own best-loved ideas. Warren and I call it destroy your own wrong ideas early before they destroy you. It's the single best mental habit I ever developed. Almost nobody practices it. Instead, they cling to nonsense. I've seen investors hold on to the market always goes up right before a 50% crash. I've seen people believe real estate never loses value right before it did. I've seen PhDs defend elaborate theories that collapsed the moment reality intervened. Confidence without evidence is just ego, and ego is expensive. By 60, you should know how often you've been wrong. You've bought dumb things, trusted the wrong people, backed the wrong horse, maybe even married the wrong person. Yet somehow you still think your current opinions are bulletproof. Why? Wisdom isn't about being right, it's about knowing when you might be wrong. I've said I don't know thousands of times. Sometimes I really didn't, and sometimes I just didn't care. Either way, those three words saved me from a lot of pain. When you admit you don't know, you stop gambling on things you don't understand. The world is full of people pretending to be experts on television and investment clubs at dinner tables. 99% of them are bluffing. The 1% who actually know something are too busy working to show up on CNBC. So how do you fix the overconfidence problem? It's simple. Assume you're ignorant. That way you'll keep learning. Force yourself to read things you disagree with. Otherwise, you're just confirming your own stupidity. Look for evidence that disproves your beliefs. If you're bullish on something, spend twice as long searching for reasons it might fail. And above all, avoid the disease of certainty. Certainty kills curiosity. And curiosity is the only thing that keeps you sharp past 60. I once told a group of students, if you can't state the other side's argument better than they can, you don't understand your own argument. They laughed. But it's true. If you can't argue against yourself, you're not thinking, you're cheerleading. And here's the punchline, past 60, cheerleading is dangerous. Because if you bet your retirement savings on your favorite idea, and you turn out to be wrong, you don't have time to recover. So downgrade your confidence, upgrade your humility. It won't make you sound impressive at cocktail parties, but it will keep you solvent, sane, and alive. And in the long run, that's a much better outcome. I could have been twice as rich if I hadn't made one dumb mistake 50 years ago. That's not humility. That's arithmetic. The problem with life is that you don't get to rerun the tape. You get one shot. By the time you're 60, the margin for error is gone. You've already made most of your mistakes. The question is simple. Do you keep compounding them, or do you finally wise up? Here's the first unpleasant truth. Past 60, your time is more valuable than your money. Yet most people act as if they have endless tomorrows. They don't. I've buried enough friends to know this firsthand. If you're over 60, you don't need a miracle. You need discipline, clarity, and above all, you need to stop doing stupid things. I don't mean rocket science stupidity. I mean the ordinary, everyday kind that ruins most lives. Envy, debt, overconfidence, the wrong spouse, the wrong friends, the wrong habits. People reach 60 and still chase some magic trick to undo decades of sloppy decisions. Newsflash, the compounding you ignored in your 20s and 30s doesn't suddenly show up at 65. The only compounding left is in your daily behavior, your health, your temperament, your choices. And yes, that compounding can still ruin you. My own family taught me that lesson early. I watched the Great Depression erase everything. Banks failed, business collapsed, and people who thought they were rich on Monday were broke by Friday. My father's clients, Durham, hard-working, respectable, most of them never recovered. Once you've seen wealth vanish like smoke, you stop believing in safety. You learn that survival beats brilliance every time. That lesson only grows sharper with age. After 60, you can't rebuild from zero anymore. There's no fresh start waiting for you. The young fool can recover. An old fool stays a fool. So here's your checklist. If you're past 60, stop chasing hot investments. You won't get rich quick. You'll get poor slowly. Stop hanging around losers. Their chaos becomes your chaos. Stop pretending you'll change tomorrow. If you don't fix a habit today, you never will. And stop envying people who got luckier than you. Envy doesn't make them poorer. It just makes you miserable. None of this advice is glamorous. It won't get you clicks, followers, or applause. But it's exactly how I stayed alive, sane and reasonably prosperous through 9 decades of chaos. Some people hear this and say, Charlie, you sound cynical. Wrong. I'm realistic. Realism, not optimism, is what keeps you alive at 60, 70, 80, and beyond. The truth is, you don't need brilliance at this age. You need avoidance. You need to stop doing dumb things. Fortunately, the list of dumb things is short, which is good, because by now your energy is limited. Think about it. By 60, you already know most of what you'll ever know. The real reason is whether you finally start acting on it. I didn't get rich by being smarter than everyone. I got rich by avoiding the traps everyone else insisted on stepping into.
If you're past 60, avoiding stupidity is the only game left to play. So let's start with the most poisonous trap. Envy. Envy is the only sin that isn't any fun. Think about it. Lust can be fun. Gluttony at least gives you a good meal. Even anger has its thrill. But envy, you just sit there stewing while the other guy enjoys his yacht. You don't gain a thing. Yet most people past 60 can't stop comparing.
They'll look at their neighbor's retirement house, a golf club membership, their children's careers, and think, why not me? It's pathetic. By 60, you should know better. If you don't, you're guaranteeing yourself a bitter old age. I've been poor and I've been rich. I grew up in the Depression with nothing. I ended up a billionaire. And let me tell you, the happiest people I've ever known weren't the richest. They were the ones who stopped keeping score. There's always someone with a bigger balance sheet. Always someone who got luckier. Always some fool who bought Apple stock in 2003 and never sold. If that still bothers you, you'll have peace no matter how well you've done. Envy, at its core, is a lack of self-respect. You're saying, I'd rather measure my life by someone else's scoreboard than by my own values. That's weakness, pure and simple. And weakness in old age is fatal. I've seen successful men crumble because they couldn't bear watching their peers get richer. They already had enough. They were secure, but envy gnawed at them until they made some dumb move, buying overpriced tech stocks, doubling down on bad real estate, chasing the next big thing, and when it all collapsed, they weren't just broke, they were humiliated. Warren and I used to joke that avoiding envy is the easiest competitive advantage in the world, because almost no one can do it. Most people would rather self-destruct than let someone else get ahead. So here's my advice for anyone over 60. Cut envy out like a cancer. If your neighbor drives a Ferrari, congratulate him. Then get back into your old Buick and go home. That Ferrari won't make him wiser, healthier, or kinder. It won't make his marriage better. And in 20 years, it'll be just another collector's item gathering dust. You know what actually compounds at 60? Gratitude. Not the fake kind you post online, but real gratitude, the kind that lets you wake up and say, I'm still here. My bills are paid. My family doesn't hate me. That's enough. I've lived a lot of very rich people. And when you reach your 80s and 90s, the scoreboard shrinks fast. Nobody cares about your net worth. They care whether you're decent company, still curious, still able to laugh at yourself. Envy poisons all of that. It makes you small, bitter, and impossible to be around. So here's the blunt truth. If you're over 60 and still consumed by envy, you're wasting what little time you have left, and you'll die miserable. Cut it out today, because once you are competing with everyone else, you finally gain the freedom to enjoy your own life. Most people spend their whole lives as careerists. They follow orders, polish resumes, and wait for someone higher up to notice them. It feels safe, predictable, but it's a terrible way to build wealth and an even worse way to build independence. I figured that out early. Working for a paycheck is like running on a treadmill. You sweat a lot, but you never move forward. Ownership is what gets you off the treadmill. Ownership of businesses, of investments, of your own damn decisions. Careerism feels safer because it gives you structure and applause. For the first 20 or 30 years, that illusion holds. But by the time you hit 60, you realize all those safe decisions added up to dependence. Dependence on a company, a pension, or a system that might not care whether you live or die. That's why so many retirees are bitter. They played the game right only to discover the rules were rigged. I was lucky. I had mentors who beat ownership thinking into me early. Benjamin Franklin said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." I took that to mean stop being a wage slave and start thinking like an owner. That's what Warren and I did at Berkshire. We didn't chase titles. We didn't crave approval. We didn't try to look smart. We just bought businesses we liked and held on. We thought like landlords, not tenants. Over the decades, that mindset compounded into freedom, not just financial freedom, but the kind that lets you wake up and decide what to do with your day. Contrast that with the average careerist who spends a lifetime asking, how do I please the boss? By 60, that habit is impossible to break. They're still chasing validation from people who carrying years ago. Meanwhile, the owner types, the ones who build assets instead of resumes, are measuring their lives in cash flow, autonomy, and time. Tell me which one sleeps better at night. So if you're past 60, stop thinking like an employee, even if you still are one. Stop asking for permission. Stop looking upward for validation. Start asking, what do I actually own? What do I actually control? Because ownership, not careerism, is the only thing that gives you freedom in old age. And freedom is the only thing worth having once the clock starts running out. I was born in 1924, which means my childhood was one long tutorial in misery. The Great Depression wasn't a chapter in a textbook. It was fathers out of work, neighbors losing farms, families slicing dinner into smaller pieces so everyone could pretend they weren't hungry. My father was a lawyer, smart, respectable, and yet his clients vanished overnight when the banks collapsed. That's when I learned intelligence is no defense when the system itself breaks. That experience burned a lesson into my brain. Survival beats brilliance. The people who got through the Depression weren't the gamblers or the optimists. They were the cautious ones, the savers, the people who avoided debt like it was poison. They didn't chase fads. They didn't gamble. They endured. Meanwhile, the clever ones, the leveraged dreamers, were wiped out. Some never recovered. I never forgot that Berkshire Hathaway isn't a miracle of genius. It's a monument to survival. Warren and I always asked, what happens if we're wrong? And we built our lives so that if we were wrong, we'd still be standing. That's the Depression talking. If you're over 60, understand this, you don't have time for comebacks. One big mistake can erase everything. So don't aim to be clever, aim to be durable. Cash is oxygen. You never think you need it until you're gasping for it. Debt is a noose. Once it tightens, you can't breathe. Optimism can be fatal if it blinds you to risk. Humility is survival. People hate hearing that. They want pep talks. Things always get better. Tell that to the family that lost everything in 1931. I'm not saying you should live in fear. I'm saying respect reality. Reality has sharp teeth, and it bites the arrogant first. I'm 99 years old. I've seen wars, crashes, bubbles, pandemics, and the same rule still applies. Avoid stupidity, build a margin of safety, and keep living to fight another day. That's not brilliance. That's instinct, and it's underrated, especially after 60, when the game isn't about getting rich anymore. It's about staying rich and staying sane. If you want to stay sane, you need 3 rules. Avoid debt, avoid drama, avoid dumb people. That's it. Those 3 will save you more misery than any self-help book ever will. Debt strangles you. Drama exhausts you. Dumb people destroy you. I kept my life deliberately boring. No lawsuits, no shouting, no chaos, just steady compounding. It doesn't makes for a peaceful life. And if you're wondering what to do now, at this age, the answer is simple. Clean house. Pay off your debts. Cut ties with toxic people. Declutter your time. Because once you stop boring chaos, life gets very quiet. And that quiet is where peace lives. Most partnerships fail. They collapse under ego, greed, or plain stupidity. Mine with Warren Buffett lasted nearly 60 years. That wasn't luck. That was design. We had complementary brains. Warren loved numbers. I loved structure. He could read 500 pages of balance sheets like a kid reads comic books. I cared about the psychology, the mental models, the architecture of visit making. Put those together and you get resilience. We trusted each other completely. No contracts, no lawyers, just a handshake.
If Warren said he'd do something, it was done. That kind of trust is rarer than diamonds.
And we shared values. We didn't want yachts or sycophants. We wanted independence and rationality. That alignment saved us from a lifetime of conflict. Did we make mistakes? Plenty. We missed Walmart. We ignored tech too long. We held losers too long. Being partners didn't make us perfect. It just made us less stupid. And sometimes that's all you need. Our arguments were never about ego. They were about ideas. We could fight for an hour, then laugh over lunch. Because neither of us cared about winning. We cared about being right. And if one of us had a bad idea, the other killed it quickly. No sugarcoating. That's what most partnerships lack. Honesty. Everyone's too polite, too fragile, too proud. We were blunt, brutal even. But it worked. People imagine our partnership was some grand alliance. It wasn't. It was boring. We read, we talked, we invested year after year, quietly compounding. Would I have succeeded without Warren? Probably. Would he have without me? Absolutely. But together, we avoided more stupidity than either of us could have alone. That's why Berkshire became what it is. No, that's just the consistent absence of stupidity. If you're over 60 and lucky enough to have a true partner in business or in life, protect it. Don't nitpick. Don't compete. Don't poison it with ego. And if you don't have one, learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Independence is the only insurance policy that never expires. Because when the clock runs out, and it always does, the only wealth that matters is peace of mind.